Alrighty, time for the long-awaited Ranger teaching tutorial. Hopefully we can get into a bottom tier. Just gonna quickly go over the modules. Taking Airgroups Modification 1 and Aircraft Engines Modification 1 in slots 1 and 2. These are the obvious ones since these are 2-plane upgrades. Personally, I'm taking Torpedo Bombers Modification. The other options are AA guns and attack aircraft. So if you get comfortable with your attack aircraft, you don't really need the extra 2 seconds. And same goes for torpedo bombers, but what taking TBM1 does that I enjoy, which you don't necessarily need to agree with, is that it gives you a bit more time to arm your drop from a longer distance so you get a perfectly accurate drop, at least for the first attack run. So I like being able to do that because of the extra 5 seconds of arming time, so I can arm from, let's say, like 7 or 8 kilometers and then just zoom in and get a nice accurate first drop into where I want when I'm hitting an attack target. AA Guns Modification 1 is also fine, especially because it's at a tier where there's plenty of double carrier games, so the AA comes into good use. And lastly for slot 4, you could take any of the 3-plane upgrades technically, but because the Ranger is primarily a dive bomber focused carrier hull, and also the carrier squadron has the most health in the dive bombers with 9 planes in the squadron, the percentage base is also the largest here, and dive bombers by their very nature have to get closest to the target and spend the most amount of time inside the AA bubble. I feel that Bombers Modification 2 is the optimal upgrade. With that said, I'll just go over the captain build. I have a bit of a weird captain build right now, 13 points. So I'm opting not to take any of the 4-point skills right now, instead opting for maximum durability because I only have a 13-point captain on this commander. Right, so I'm taking all of the 1-point skills, and then torpedo acceleration and plane speed, and then the 2 durability skills. So sight stabilization and concealment expert are the 2 real-ish options, unless you want to specify AA skills. But of the 2, sight stabilization offers a small benefit, particularly for bombers, so especially when you're a newer player, sight stabilization is a very good skill. During this respec period, I've been trying to run without it and take concealment instead. If you look at my midway captain, for example, getting some lag. Yeah, okay, so if you look at my midway captain, for example, you'll see that I'm just not taking it entirely, and I'm just taking basically a bunch of 2 of the 1-point skills, torpedo acceleration, the 3 3-pointers, the 2 durability skills, and demo expert and concealment, because the midway has an enormous 15+ kilometers detection range, and so that helps you get closer to the battlefield. This is an 18-1 captain with 1 point spare, so with the last 2 points I'm looking to get plane speed. But yeah, with my 13 points on the Ranger, I'm just opting for durability. When I played through the Ranger, I had a different setup with only 13 points as well. I was taking sight stabilization, but overall, like, the core important skills really are, in my opinion, last gasp, torpedo acceleration, aircraft armor, and survivability experts. So build as you wish from there. Anyhow, let's get started. I actually want to get into a bottom tier game, where I'm bottom tier basically, so a tier 6 to 8 game, because I think that shows the best demonstration of the matchmaking you can look to expect. But we'll see. Looks like we instantly queued up, so let's see what we're working with here. Okay, so we're actually middle tier here, so not as difficult as it could be, but I'll try to still go over the general principles of the game. So here I'm a mid-tier carrier, and there's a Colorado, KGV, New Mexico, and Iron Duke, and October Revolution. Of these, the only thing with really kind of scary AA is maybe the Colorado, so nothing too much to worry about there. The Helena with defensive AA is going to be painful to deal with. The Fiji, even as a tier 7 carrier, has a pretty middling AA, and a Königsberg can't take defensive AA, and he's a tier 5, so he's not a threat. And then there's one beauty, and the Kirov is also similarly irrelevant. Ooh, really getting some frame drop here. Okay. Hopefully that doesn't come through in recording, so I'm just going to start the game by launching my attack craft. So we're working with the F4F Wildcats. These fire the H-bars with 27mm of armor penetration. So basically in this kind of matchmaking, they penetrate everything. When you're bottom tier and you get battleships that start to get the 32mm outer external plating, you're forced to target the superstructure if you want to attack them, but that's not that relevant in this game. All of the battleships here have 25mm external plating, which means essentially as long as my rockets don't touch the gun turrets and barbettes, or the belt armor, they should get full penetrations. So here we're looking to try and scout the Acasta. We can see that the enemy carriers probably spawned over here on this side. Oh, and we've found the Acasta already. Just flying by. Oh, so we see the Kirov that we can do a quick attack on. There's a Helena beside him, so we can't spend too much time here, but oh, I missed. Bit of a missed drop there. But yeah, just try to get some information. Oh, this is not something I want to be near, necessarily. Out of my boost bar, probably going to lose planes here, but not too concerned. Rocket reserves are easy to replenish. Well, not easy to replenish, but pretty expendable. Normally when you scout, so I made an attack which put me over this group. Normally when you scout, you want to just scout and come back out and come back in and get information, but because I got extra information from my allied carrier, scouting that side, my vision became kind of irrelevant, and I'm really not going to reach for the rockets for a while again anyway, so having 4 out of 9 now is like not a big deal. By the time I reach for rockets again, more than likely it's going to be a full squadron again. Or close to a full squadron. I'll at least have the 6 planes to make up a full squadron. So I'm launching dive bombers next. I'm going to go back to ACAP where we spotted the Acasta. The only thing escorting him really is the Fiji. The Königsberg and New Mexico aren't going to be that threatening. So yeah, we're going to go to A and try and decap if we can. And if we can't decap, we'll at least attack the planes, or these ships there. So if I were facing anything with more extensive AA, I'd probably ditch 1 out of 3 attack waves and go down to 6 out of 9 aircraft in this attack squadron. But because it's just a Fiji, I want to keep the overall health of my squadron high, so that I can make an attack and have the maximum possible health in case I make a mistake and fly into a flak buff, and then decide again from there. So the Fiji's in smoke. There's the Acasta though. That's what we want. So my allied Ryuja is going after him with rockets. That's fine because the IJN carriers lack a proper tool to attack TDs, unless you're skilled enough to use torpedo bombers, which, yes, you should be able to do, but there's nothing wrong with using rockets. Oh, okay, you saw there, I took a flak buff that I really shouldn't have, to get to 2 kilometers. Okay, he's turning in, so I'm holding back on the boost bar, make sure I don't overshoot. Oh, okay, I should have dropped there, my mistake. He quote-unquote juked me, but yeah, look, I'm not really taking any damage, and the 9 planes distributing or averaging out the damage over, of course. Come on, team, shoot. There we go, nice. Now all my planes are orange, which means all of them are below or at 50% health, so rather than risk them, I'm just going to recall them and relaunch. So we're looking for stragglers. And what do you see on the minimap? Constantly look at the minimap when you're assigning yourself targets. Ignore your team killing themselves. We're looking for someone who's alone and without strong AA. That's the ideal combination. If you can't find someone like that, then you want someone who's just alone. So what do you see? The Helena should immediately stand out to you. We're going to look for the Helena with these torpedo bombers. The torpedo bombers are a supplementary weapon on the American carriers. Your preferred weapon is always a dive bombers. They're the most consistent, and they also deal the most damage over the course of the game. But failing that, the torpedo bombers are perfectly serviceable on the Ranger. So if the Helena was with anyone else, like any other kind of ship basically, I'd probably have ditched a pair of torpedo bombers to preserve them, because American light cruiser is pretty potent, especially when they're up-tiering you. So yeah, but he's alone, or theoretically alone anyway. I need to actually find him again. Spawning at the Ranger, but don't really want to attack him. Oh, where did this guy go? It's a KGB. If no one else is with the KGB, I might attack him as well. Or attack him instead, rather. Alright, well, we lost contact, but we can see now that there really is no one beside him. So just come in from the side. You can drop earlier than this, or maybe even a little later. But yeah, usually for BBs that are moving forward, I just lead right in front like that. And with torpedo acceleration, you should hit them about midships if they're moving kind of at speed. And if they slow down like that, usually you'll just hit them on the bow. So I don't have the heal yet. Oh, my planes are taking quite a bit of damage because I flew over the 2 battleships over there. So I'm probably going to be able to make one more attack, it looks like. Bring it right up. And we're going to use the last gas boost bar to try and boost through the AA from the KGB. So I'm going to enter into attack run because once the reticle is green, you get a 30% damage or defensive bonus, which will help you keep your planes alive. So we hit him 4 times there. No floods, unfortunately. That's fine. We've identified him as an isolated target. He's taken some damage. And whenever you take damage, especially HE damage, you lose modules. And losing modules like AA guns means that your planes will be able to loiter more safely over the target. And yeah, he's alone. The October Revolution is kind of in his shared space. So what we might actually do is just attack him, the KGB, loop around behind and hit. Oh no, he's with another BB. Even the 2 tier 5s together, even though their AA is both pretty much mediocre, non-existent. Okay, not non-existent, but mediocre. The 2 together is still more difficult of a target than just this lone KGB, so I'm going to continue to go for the KGB. So make sure you save some amount of boost, even if you use some to accelerate your journey here for the actual approach, because you want to spend the least amount of time possible in the actual AA bubble. Dropping pretty high. You can typically drop lower if you want to. So come around. I'm holding back to get the back boost to get the tightest possible turn, and I'm not going to apply any boost at all on my way down because I don't need to. And now when I'm finally on target, boost a little bit to get back onto target. And here with the attack bombers, or sorry, the dive bombers, I can't do the attack trick with the torpedo bombers I showed you earlier to get the defense bonus, because you don't, oh, okay, don't fly into flak like that. You don't get the defensive bonus like you do, because you don't, your planes don't traverse, right, because they're dive bombers. So there would be no point to entering the attack run and getting the defense bonus because you're just spending more time in the AA. So the trade-off is not worth it. I'm gonna relaunch these dive bombers. I had a 6 out of 9 squadron here, which is perfect. I only really want to make one attack run and follow up on that fire on the KGB. And so I don't need a full squadron for that. The fire is ticking, but he's probably gonna have to put it out, especially if this Ryujo attacks him like he is. The Ryujo has also identified that he's the lone target. So yeah, this will be perfect. With just 6 planes, I only have 2 attacks, which means I'll make my first attack. I can use however much boost I want for that first attack, and then last gasp will refill my boost bar on the way out. Oh, no, don't fly in. Oh, okay, don't do what I did there. Enter the attack run, 3 kilometers away because he's moving towards me. Can let the reticle fill. And when I'm right over the target, frag him. And then now my boost bar is refilled, and I can boost out of the AA bubble. Again, recall once I'm out of AA range, and now I can relaunch my 7 out of 9 dive bomber squadron. Basically, any non-full squadron is just fine to launch, like you don't really care. You want to preserve your plane health more than like try to make multiple attack runs, because it's more important to get that one good first hit. Like even though you are a quote-unquote damage over time class, really, you should be looking for sufficient alpha damage to deal a good, safe amount of damage without taking too much in return. Because the best kind of damage you can deal is free damage. You need to think of your planes as a resource, where you're basically, the number of planes you have is equivalent to the health that you would have when you're on a more standard ship hull. And you want to preserve the plane health and the plane reserves over the course of the game. Otherwise, as the game comes to a stop, you'll be running low on your reserves, and you won't be able to affect the game anymore. Because carriers are, in the end, strongest. Strongest at the end of the game when ships thin out and there's less stacking AA. And you can see there, even the tier 5 AA from the October Revolution is fully capable of killing planes if you're not careful. A side effect of losing that plane though is that I got a refill on my boost bar from last gasp, which was good. Helped me get the rest of the squadron out safely. So I set a fire on the October Revolution. He's at 2k, so we're just gonna follow up. Either my Ryujo is gonna kill him, or I'll go and kill him. Okay, he died. So, but we're still gonna attack the Iron Duke because he's a lone target. At this point, I should be thinking about my hull. Once you like establish which flank is secure, you can start moving your hull around. So this flank is obviously uncontrolled and this flank is controlled, so I'm going to move up and get closer to the battlefield in order to reduce the turnaround time of my planes. Because the time that you're in the air when you're not attacking is basically time you're not doing damage. So by coming closer to the battlefield, you increase the risk to your hull, but you decrease the travel distance and thereby increase your potential damage and impact on the game. So yeah, it's a pros and cons kind of thing, so you got to make an assessment. Here you can see the single tier 5 plane, or tier 5 battleship here with barely any AAs, essentially not having any impact on my plane health. So I can just casually just attack him twice with the 7 planes. He's getting attacked by multiple carriers. You can see there the mid-range flak puffs kind of denting my planes here, but ultimately unconcerning. I'm gonna have 1 plane left over, so that's fine. He's getting flooding. Not gonna get a fire. I'm just gonna recall that 1 plane. There's no point wasting time attacking with just 1 bomb on the Ranger. Might as well just launch a fresh squadron. And yep, looks like our job's gonna be to finish him if our team can't. Sorry about the frame loss there. Ooh, someone died. Okay, Iron Duke dropped. Colorado. So you notice I've just been harassing the battleships mainly. I was looking for that Helena earlier, but your priorities are DDs, cruisers, and then BBs, as in every class. However, it's really just dependent on positioning. Your job in a carrier is to attack people who are vulnerable, and people who are alone are the most vulnerable, and the BBs in this game have kind of been splitting apart, so that's why I've been going for them. You're not always going to go for battleships. You should pretty much go for DDs and cruisers if you can get to them, if they're not a really potent AA threat. But overall, yeah, just prioritize on shooting at targets that are vulnerable. And you'll notice I haven't been using the fighter consumable that much to defend my teammates, and that's because, well, to be quite frank, you can also see the tier 7 AA chipping away at my planes. Defending your teammates is just not really an optimal use of your time. I know it sounds kind of poor, but in this rework, it's really about doing things on your own that you want to focus on. I'm gonna try and save one of these 2 planes. The red health plane is probably gonna die. Oh, okay, I'm gonna lose both. I'm gonna launch my torpedo bombers. Just because they're a slightly better alpha weapon in this situation. But yeah, you don't necessarily want to defend your teammates that much unless they're kind of on the way. At least not in random battles. In random battles, it's about having an impact with your teammates. Like, obviously, if they're on the way to your target anyway and they're getting attacked, you can drop them a fighter like this. Another thing you can do with them is use them to scout out DDs. I just haven't been able to show you that this game because the enemy DD died pretty quickly. So basically, like, you'll find them and then they'll smoke up, and you don't want to stick around and just loiter over the AA, right? Because normally they'll either have their own AA on or like allied AA around them, and so you'll just lose planes and lose time where you could be doing damage by loitering. So what you can do is also just drop a fighter on top of their smoke screen, and if they come out of it or if the smoke screen fades, you'll get vision. Coming around with these torpedo bombers, I don't necessarily expect this attack to go off. I have the health for it. Okay. You can see the extended attack time here, giving me time to harass the Helena. Okay. In the end, what actually happened was I lost 2 extra planes for free, but I would have had extra time to launch the last 2 torpedoes if I really needed to there, because of the extended attack time, whereas if I didn't take the torpedo bombers modification 1, I wouldn't have the 5 extra seconds and I would have timed out. But yeah, this game's been very tame. I've essentially just been attacking battleships ever since that DD kill. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the game, I never ever reached for my rockets again. Haven't touched them since. The squadron's fully replenished. It's been fully replenished for several minutes. At this point in the late game, it's very easy for my enemy carrier to protect his allies with fighter planes, because he just doesn't have allies left to defend, right? It's very, like, most of my ships, or our ships I should say, coming towards their targets are going to be on the way. Like, they're chasing down this New Mexico, for example, right? So when he's attacking my teammates, New Mexico's on the way to of his attacks anyways. So it's convenient for him to just drop this guy a fighter. So I'm coming from the side. Obviously it's not that ideal. The instant damage control. American damage control 20 seconds. So I'm gonna have to like complete my attack before his damage control comes off cooldown, unfortunately, so I'm not gonna get a follow-up fire here. But we'll see if I have enough plane health to actually punish him after. Yep, so you saw 2 bomb shatters there, and that was the bombs hitting the turret armor. My planes are actually pretty healthy, 2000 health. So I can come around for another attack, and this time his damage control is going to be on cooldown. So if I set a fire here, it'll stick. So this is one of the few situations in the late game where, because I have a full squadron, I can make 3 attacks, and I got 3 full penetrations and a permanent fire. And that'll be a nice, consistent source of permanent damage for the rest of the game, which is not really long for this world, honestly. The game's pretty much over. I probably should have moved closer ages ago. Like, your hull has health. You don't need to be afraid about taking 0 damage. It's only when you take lethal damage that it becomes relevant. Or it becomes very relevant. As you start to take more and more damage, the risk to you being up there increases. But as long as you're not dead and you can continue to field planes, you should get as close as possible without risking dying. So at this point now, there's only the carriers left, and only now do I really go after the carriers. I will almost never attack carriers unless I absolutely have to, because carrier A is extremely potent, and the carrier has a fighter plane consumable, which absolutely devastates mine. Yep, it's launching right now by itself. You see it there circling, and it has the ranger fighter at this level has it's like 6 planes. So the fighter will never, or almost never, intercept your first attack, so you get your first attack off. But okay, you see how the radical locked on? He tagged it, but I was still able to make my first attack. So I got 2 torpedoes into the water. I might land 1. I think he turned out though. Yeah, I ended up landing 1, but yeah, that cost me the other 2 planes. So there was no point in me bringing the other 2 planes along, because each fighter kills 1 plane. So if I kept the full squadron of 6 torpedo bombers, that just means I would have lost the other 4 torpedo bombers instead of just losing 2. Because I would never have made it around for another pass. The fighter DPM is way higher than your plane health, and they just keep shooting at your planes until what's it called? Until each one has killed 1 plane for each fighter. So there's absolutely no point. I've also been pretty conservative in my boost here. You can use it more aggressively. You'll particularly use, and yeah, look, the fighter plane consumable is so short cooldown. If I were braver, I could almost just come in with 1 squadron. It looks like I might actually be able. Okay, it's locked on. Yeah, he's really limiting the amount of time I have over the target. Yeah, like only 2 of my dive bombers made it through. The consumable on your carrier hull does have a cooldown, and does have a limited number of charges, but like there's so many and the cooldown is so short that effectively the carrier will usually just keep having fighters until you run out of attack. You'll run out of attack points before the carrier runs out of fighters. It's gonna spawn another fighter for my allied battleship. He was, you know, chasing this ranger, so he's on the way. So yeah, fighter's really potent. Which makes attacking carriers an extremely unattractive target. At this point, he's been attacked so frequently and launched so many fighters that either he's run out or is on cooldown. And now I can get nice clean attacks in. Okay, there's the fighter. It was on cooldown. He's gonna burn. So damage over time. Oh, we're gonna lose these. Okay, the game ended. But what I was gonna say was that you used to be able to damage over time down carriers. So basically, you would attack them once, get a fire or a flooding, and then wait for them to damage control. And then it would be on a very long cooldown, and you could come back with a follow-up attack and fire and flood them out. But the new damage carrier damage control is extremely short cooldown. It has a long duration, something like 30 seconds. And even if the damage control is on cooldown, fires and floods only last 5 seconds on carriers. So it's not really that efficient to damage them. So it's kind of hard to kill people here. Anyhow, discussing the game, it was a fairly tame game. 97,000 damage, sorry, and 2,500 experience with just the first win multiplier. 2 kills, 10 fires, 1 flood. So you can see here, 33 bombs, 6 torpedoes, 10 rockets, mostly focusing on the bombs here on the Ranger. Just look at the team score briefly. 1600 base, not too bad given how it's middle tier. Look at a detailed damage report. As I had mentioned, it's all mostly battleship damage because these are the guys who isolated themselves out. There is some very relevant damage here on the destroyer, which is what you want to be focusing on. And yeah, towards the end of the game, you could see my squadrons were still pretty full, and that way I was able to have a consistent impact throughout the game. And I almost never reach for the rockets, as I mentioned, because honestly the rockets are just a very inconsistent weapon, so you only really want to use them as a last resort weapon for fires and floods. And yeah, hopefully that was a helpful overview of the Ranger. I'm going to try and do another commentary later where I get into a bottom tier game, but for now, yeah, this is the Ranger, the teaching carrier, shall we say. And I'll see you guys later.